Hey everyone, tonight we are standing on the edge of a lagoon, where the air is so thick with salt and humidity, it feels less like air and more like a warm, wet blanket you can't throw off. You're in West Africa, on what the Europeans call the Slave Coast, and the port city of Whydah is buzzing behind you. This isn't a city of grand stone monuments, not yet. It's a chaotic, sprawling, thrumming marketplace of palm thatch roofs, mud brick walls, and wooden forts, all sweating under the relentless sun. You can smell the smoke from 1,000 cooking fires, the sweet rot of fruit in the market, and the metallic temps of the ocean just over the horizon. Honestly, looking at the sanitation, the clouds of mosquitoes rising from the water, and the sheer moral ambiguity of the place, you probably wouldn't survive this for more than a week. We're talking 18th century medicine and 18th century ethics, a truly charming combination. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and post your location and your local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the grit under your sandals before you see it. The ground here isn't solid. It's a mix of sand, dirt, and crushed shells. You're trying to find your bearings, but Whydah is a city designed to confuse outsiders. There are no neat grids, no helpful street signs. There are just winding paths that lead between family compounds, past the imposing white walls of the European forts, and always, always toward the sound of the market. This is the central nervous system of the entire kingdom, and right now, it's a riot of sound. You hear the sharp cracks of Portuguese and Dutch, the flowing cadence of French, the clipped commands of English sea captains, and underpinning it all, the complex tonal languages of the Fan and the Ewe. Everyone is haggling. They're haggling over palm oil, over brightly colored textiles, over cheap brass jewelry, over gunpowder, and over human beings. This port, which will one day be known as Whydah in modern Benin, is one of the most significant and heartbreaking epicenters of the entire Atlantic slave trade. It's not a fringe operation, it's the main event. This is the engine room of a global economy, and the fuel is people. But as you stand here trying to get your bearings, you notice something strange. You can hear the ocean, the roar of the surf, but you can't see it. The city itself isn't on the ocean. It's set back, protected by a wide, shallow, and frankly disgusting-looking lagoon. It's a brackish stew of water, mud, and mangroves, and it is the absolute last line of defense for the city. This geography is everything. The massive European ships, the frigates and galleons that cross the Atlantic can't come here. The water is too shallow, and the coast itself is a death trap of sandbars and violent surf. So, the ships have to anchor a mile or two offshore, just visible as wooden specks on the blinding blue horizon. And this, right here, is the key to Whydah's power. To get anything or anyone from the shore to those ships, you have to use the local canoes. And these aren't the pleasant little rowboats you're picturing. These are massive 80-foot-long canoes, paddled by dozens of specialists who are the only people on Earth who know how to navigate the terrifying, churning surf without capsizing. They charge an outrageous fee for the service. Of course, they are the 18th century equivalent of an intercontinental shipping monopoly, and they know it. Historians still argue whether the kingdom of Whydah's predecessors chose this specific spot because of this defensive lagoon, or if it was just a geographic coincidence that they brilliantly learned to exploit for maximum profit and protection. Either way, it works. No European navy can just sail up the river and bombard the capital. To get to the power, you have to come through the front door. You have to walk through the sand, sweat through your linen shirt before you've taken 10 steps, and negotiate with the people in charge. And the people in charge here are not the Europeans. The Europeans are guests. They are tenants in their own forts, paying rent to the local king for the privilege of doing business. And a major part of that business, the person who holds the keys to the entire operation, is a woman the records would later refer to, with a mix of fear and respect, as the Queen of Whydah. You haven't met her yet, but you're in her city. You're breathing her air. And in Whydah, everyone, from the lowest-ranking sailor to the king of Dahomey himself, knows that, to get what you want, you eventually have to deal with the queen. You take a step back from the chaos of the market, trying to get a sense of the power structure. It's easy to look at the massive French, English, and Portuguese forts lining the lagoon and assume they are in charge. You'd be wrong. You're standing in Whydah, but Whydah is just a territory. The real landlord, the man who owns the ground beneath your feet and the air you're breathing, lives 100 miles inland. You are in a coastal province of the formidable kingdom of Dahomey, and the king of Dahomey, ruling from his royal capital of Abomey, is one of the most powerful monarchs in Africa. He is not a man you trifle with. He is not a man who gets haggled with. He sets the terms. The city of Whydah, which was its own independent kingdom for centuries, was violently conquered by Dahomey in 1727. King Agaja of Dahomey, a brilliant and ruthless strategist, saw this port city for what it was: the single most valuable piece of real estate on the West African coast. It was the golden faucet through which all European trade flowed, and he decided he wanted to be the one controlling the tap. So, he marched his armies, including the famously organized, all-male military units the Europeans called the Dahomey Amazons, and simply took it. The previous rulers were exiled, and Whydah became the kingdom's official and only deep-water trading port. This creates a fascinating, tense political landscape. The king of Dahomey controls the inland sea. He controls the armies, the agriculture, and the supply of captives taken in wars with neighboring states like the Oyo Empire. But he hates the coast. The royal court in Abomey views Whydah as a necessary evil. It's a spiritually corrupt, chaotic, and dangerous place, full of untrustworthy foreigners, strange diseases, and the morally compromising business of the slave trade. But they need it. They are completely dependent on Whydah for one thing above all else: firearms. The entire geopolitical power of Dahomey rests on a terrible, grinding feedback loop. To remain in power, the king must defend his borders against his rivals. To do that, he needs modern European guns. To get the guns, the Europeans demand only one currency: human beings. To get the human beings, the king must wage war on his neighbors to take prisoners, who are then marched to Whydah to be traded for more guns. So, while the king sits in Abomey, he rules Whydah through a viceroy, a governor called the Yovogin, which translates literally to chief of the white men. This Yovogin is the official face of Dahomey's power on the coast. He negotiates the official treaties, collects the king's taxes, and holds court. But everyone knows that government bureaucracy is slow. The Yovogin handles the diplomacy, but the logistics, the die-to-day business of moving thousands of people and metric tons of goods, falls to private entrepreneurs. This is where the local economy gets truly strange. The official currency here isn't gold, which Dahomey has plenty of. It's cowrie shells, tiny witten purple shells imported by the Dutch all the way from the Maldives Islands in the Indian Ocean. You want to buy gunpowder? That'll be 20 galenas of cowries, which is a complex measurement involving thousands upon thousands of individual shells, all counted by hand. It's a deliberately complex system that allows for infinite haggling over exchange rates, and it's a system the locals have mastered. This whole arrangement is a source of endless academic debate. Historians still argue whether Dahomey's conquest of Whydah was as their own. Court records insist a move to bring order to a chaotic and exploitative trade, or if it was a purely cynical corporate takeover designed to create a state monopoly on human trafficking. The truth, you suspect, is uncomfortably in the middle. The kings of Dahomey were not simple villains. They were rulers trapped in a global economic system that demanded brutality for survival. This port was their lifeline, their poison, and their greatest strategic asset. And in this high-stakes environment, where a single diplomatic mistake could cost a fortune and a logistical error could start a war, the king didn't just rely on his official Yovogin. He relied on a handful of local merchant princes, and the most powerful of them all was a woman. You're trying to figure out who really pulls the strings. You've seen the Yovogin, the king's governor, holding court in his official residence, surrounded by armed guards and royal symbols. You've seen the European captains in their forts, barking orders and counting their ledgers. But as you watch the daily flow of business, you start to notice a third, more subtle, center of gravity. You see a Portuguese trader fuming about a delayed shipment, suddenly calm down and hurry away after a quiet word from a local woman. You see one of the Yovogin's own lieutenants respectfully bowing, not to a European, but to a convoy of porters carrying goods away from the official market and into a private compound. This compound, you learn, belongs to the woman they call the Queen. Now, let's be clear. She is not a literal queen, she wears no crown, and she has no official royal title from the King of Dahomey. That's not how power works here. Her title, among the locals, is Lopo. It's a term of immense respect, translating loosely to merchant princess or head woman. It signifies someone who, through a combination of brilliant acumen, ruthless negotiation, and powerful family connections, has risen to the absolute pinnacle of the private enterprise sector. The Europeans call her queen as a simple, crude approximation of her status. Because businesswoman who could buy and sell our entire fort was too complicated for their ledgers. You finally see her. She's not holding court in a throne room, but in the deep, breezy shade of her compound's courtyard, shielded from the oppressive sun by mango trees. She is not old, perhaps in her late 30s or early 40s, and she radiates an aura of absolute, unshakable calm. She isn't wearing European silks or corsets. She is draped in yards of the most expensive, intricately patterned local cloth, the kind that costs more than a European sailor's entire annual salary. Her wrists are heavy with gold bangles, and a single flawless gold ornament is woven into her hair. She doesn't look at you. She's busy. In front of her are two men, a nervous-looking Dutch captain, who is visibly sweating through his linen shirt, and one of her own lieutenants. The Dutch captain is pleading his case for a faster turnaround. She listens patiently, takes a slow sip of palm wine from a carved wooden cup, and then speaks. Her voice is low, and she doesn't raise it. She speaks not in Dutch, but in Fawn, which her lieutenant translates into clipped, functional Portuguese, the lingua franca of the coast. The captain protests. She simply raises an eyebrow. The negotiation is over. The captain, looking defeated, but also relieved, bows and leaves. He has just been handled. This is her function. She is the ultimate fixer. The Yovogin and the king handle the high-level politics and collect the taxes. The European forts handle the transatlantic shipping. But the queen is the supply chain. She is the one who has the networks to provision a ship holding 600 people for an 8-week voyage in less than 3 days. She's the one who provides the financing, extending credit to captains who arrive with the wrong goods. She's the one who controls the canoemen, who controls the porters, and who has the private holding pens, the barracoons, that are cleaner and more efficient than the official statron ones. The existence of powerful female merchants, or signaris, as they were known in other parts of the coast, is a well-documented fact. In many West African societies, women had far more economic autonomy and power than their counterparts in Europe. They controlled local markets, ran businesses, and passed their wealth down. The queen is the apex of this system. Here's a quirky tidbit about her power. Her personal trademark isn't gold or cloth, it's information. She is paid informants inside the walls of every European fort on the staff of the Yovogin, and it's whispered. Even within the royal court at Abumi, she knows which captain is desperate to fill his quota, which fort has an outbreak of fever, and which rival merchant is about to have his credit lines cut. This information is her true currency, and it makes her indispensable. Historians still argue whether these powerful Lopo figures were truly independent entrepreneurs, or if they were in reality unofficial branches of the royal family's own economic enterprise, privators given a license to operate as long as they kicked a significant portion of their profits back to the throne. You suspect the queen doesn't care about the distinction. She pays her taxes to the Yovogin, she gives lavish gifts to the king, and in return, she is left alone to run the single most profitable land, most brutal logistics operation in the most profitable port in West Africa. She is the living link between the inland power of Dahomey and the maritime power of Europe. And she is getting rich at every step. You move away from the queen's compound, the low murmur of her negotiations fading behind you. The air changes again. The sharp, briny smell of the lagoon and the iron-rich scent of the red earth are suddenly cut with something else. It's the smell of burnt palm oil of exotic herbs you can't name, and a dry, musky scent that is somehow alive. The constant, frantic rhythm of the market is still there, but it's now competing with another, deeper rhythm, the insistent, complex beat of drums coming from a nearby temple compound. You're not just in a center of commerce, you are in the theological heart of a powerful and ancient religion. You are in the cradle of Whydah. This is the religion that will one day, after being forced through the horrific filter of the slave trade, land in Haiti, Louisiana, and Brazil, where it will be syncretized with Catholicism and become known to the world as voodoo. But here, in its homeland, it is simply the way the world works. It is not a cult or a superstition. It is the state religion, the legal framework, and the medical system all rolled into one. The king of Dahomey doesn't just rule by might. He rules because his lineage is divinely blessed by the Whydah, the powerful spirits who govern every aspect of existence, from the lightning in the sky to the fertility of the earth. You follow the sound of the drums, and the musky smell gets stronger. You soon find the source. You're standing outside a simple, circular mud brick building. There are no grand spires, no stained glass windows, just an open doorway, and guarding it, not soldiers, but pythons, dozens of them. They are draped over the low wall, sunning themselves on the thatched roof, and slithering lazily across the path. You found the Temple of Dangbi, the python. This, you quickly learn, is the single most important spiritual site in Whydah. Dangbi is the life-giving god, the rainbow serpent, who wraps the world in its coils, the symbol of continuity and life. And these pythons, docile, non-venomous rock pythons, are not just symbols of the god, they are his living representatives. They are sacred. They are, in fact, more important than you are. This is the quirky tidbit that could save your life. If you, a foreigner, were to accidentally kill one of these pythons, the fine would be so astronomically high, it would bankrupt your captain and his entire shipping company. And that's if the enraged local populace didn't just tear you apart first. You see a local woman walk by. A snake slithers onto the path, and she simply stops, bows her head respectfully, and waits for it to pass. You, of course, are frozen in place, trying not to look like a threat. This spiritual atmosphere isn't a sideshow to the main business of slaving. It is the main business. The priests of Dangbi and the other Whydah hold as much real sway as the Yov. They dictate the holy days, and on a holy day, all business stops. The market closes, the canoes are beached, the barracoons are sealed. It doesn't matter if a European captain has a ship full of a dying cargo and a favorable wind. If the priests declare the port closed for a ritual, the port is closed. This is another invisible layer of the Queen's power. You see, the European captains despise this. It's unpredictable. But the Queen is a daughter of this land. She is a devout follower, or at the very least, a deeply respectful patron of the Whydah. She gives lavishly to the temples. She knows the priests. She understands the religious calendar. She can plan for these shutdowns. And, you suspect, she can probably even influence them. What better way to put a squeeze on that arrogant Dutch captain who refused your price than to have a spontaneous 2-day religious festival declared, leaving his ship to rot in the sun? He'll be begging to pay her price by day 3. Historians still argue whether the Europeans' noted tolerance of these practices was a genuine, enlightened respect for local religion, or, far more likely, a brutally pragmatic business calculation. The priests and the Lopo were too powerful to challenge. To insult Dangbi was to insult the Queen, and to insult the Queen was to lose access to the entire supply chain. So, the Europeans simply grit their teeth, wrote about the heathen practices in their journals, and respectfully took their hats off when a python slithered past. The Queen's power, you're realizing, isn't just built on gold and cowries. It's built on a foundation of logistics, information, and a deep, unshakable connection to the invisible world that truly governs the city of Whydah. You turn away from the Python Temple, the rhythmic drumming fading slightly as you walk back. Toward the main thoroughfare, the musky scent of the Whydah shrine is replaced by something else, something heavier and far more grim. It's the smell of the lagoon, but not just the salt and mud. It's the smell of unwashed humanity, of sickness, of too many people living in too little space. It's the smell of the city's engine, and it is suffocating. You're walking toward the waterfront, the part of the city that directly faces the European forts and the canoe-launching beaches. And as you get closer, the structures change. The open-air market stalls and family compounds give way to high-walled enclosures, windowless and foreboding. You found the barracoons. The word itself, from the Portuguese barraca, just means hut or barracks, which is a chillingly neutral term for what you're seeing. These are not huts. These are human holding pens. They are the physical infrastructure of the trade, the warehouses where the Queen and other merchants store their inventory before it's shipped. You stand in the shadow of one. The walls are at least 10 feet high, made of thick, sun-baked mud brick, and topped with jagged shards of broken glass and pottery to stop anyone from climbing out. There is one massive reinforced wooden gate, and it's guarded by armed men. Not in the king's uniform, but in the private livery of the queen's personal household. You can hear sounds from within, not the lively chatter of the market. A low, constant murmur of voices from 1,000 different regions, speaking 100 different languages. You hear coughing, you hear the occasional sharp cry, quickly stifled. This is the endpoint of the long march from the interior. This is a mainstream, terrible fact. Captives taken in wars or raids hundreds of miles inland would be marched to the coast in long lines, or coffles. By the time they reached Whydah, they were often starving, sick, and traumatized. The barracoon was their last stop on African soil. This is where the cold, brutal business of the queen truly clicked into gear. This was her processing center. Inside, men were separated from women and children from everyone. They were inspected by surgeons not for their health, but for their value. This wasn't a medical checkup. It was an inventory audit. Can this one survive the voyage? Is this one sound of limb? You see a grim-looking European man, a ship's surgeon, leaving the gate, wiping his hands on a cloth, and arguing with one of the Queen's lieutenants over a price adjustment for a damaged unit. After inspection, they were branded, a hot iron shaped into the symbol of the company, or merchant who had purchased them was pressed into their skin to signify them as property. Here is a quirky and profoundly sad tidbit. A major part of the barracoon's function was to fatten up the captives. They were fed a specific high-calorie mush, often made from yams and palm oil, twice a day. This wasn't kindness, it was just good business. You can't sell a skeleton. The goal was to put just enough weight on them so they looked healthy and hail for the auction, hiding the scurvy or internal illnesses that might be lurking. It was the final grotesque act of transforming a human being into a product. The queen's barracoons were famous. While the king's official Yovojan also ran a state-owned pen, it was known for being corrupt and mismanaged. The queen's operation, by contrast, was a model of ruthless efficiency. She was the Amazon Prime of the 18th century slave trade. Her product was always sorted, fed, and ready for immediate loading. Captains paid a premium for this reliability because turnaround time was everything. Every day, a ship sat anchored offshore. It was losing money and risking disease or attack. The Queen guaranteed a captain could be fully loaded and sailing for the horizon in under 48 hours. Historians still argue whether the relative order of the Whydah barracoons, which shocked some European visitors with their factory-like organization, was a sign of a more advanced and therefore somehow better system, or if it was in fact the very perfection of inhumanity. It was a system that had processed this horror so completely that it had become a simple, boring, and profitable matter of logistics. This entire grim waterfront is defined by these pens and by the massive factories, which is the other name for the European forts. You're standing near the Portuguese fort of São João Baptista de Ajuda. It's a massive whitewashed square of a building with cannons pointing out to sea. And, as you well know, cannons pointing inland, the architecture is pure, distilled paranoia. The forts were not just trading posts. They were self-contained barracoons with massive dungeons, or slave rooms, in their cellars capable of holding over 1,000 people in suffocating darkness. This is the shadow that hangs over Whydah. The Python Temple might be the city's soul, but the barracoon is its wallet. You're standing there, staring at the high, unforgiving walls of the Queen's barracoon, and you can't help but feel a kind of vertigo. It's the sheer scale of the operation. This isn't a Backley deal, it's a corporate enterprise. You are witnessing, in real time, the most crucial link in the most infamous supply chain in human history, the triangle trade. You've heard the term in history class, but here, it's not a diagram in a textbook. It's the sweat on your skin, the smell in the air, the sound of the surf, and the low, hollow murmur from behind that wall. Here is the mainstream historical fact, the terrible engine of this entire port. Leg 1. Ships leave Europe ports like Liverpool, Nantes, or Lisbon loaded with manufactured goods. They sail south to West Africa, to places exactly like Whydah, leg to the Middle Passage. Here, they trade those goods for human beings, who are packed into the ship's holds. They then sail west, across the Atlantic, to the Americas, Brazil, the Caribbean, and North America. Leg 3. After selling the surviving captives to work on sugar, cotton, and tobacco plantations, the ships are loaded with the raw materials those plantations produce. They sail back to Europe. The sugar is refined into cubes, the cotton is spun into textiles, and the entire cycle begins again. It is a perfect, closed economic loop, and it is making Europe fabulously wealthy. And right now, you are standing at the single most critical junction, the point where leg 1 goods are exchanged for leg 2 cargo. The Queen of Whydah is the master of this junction. She's the broker. She is the calculating middlewoman who stands between the inland suppliers, the King of Dahome's armies, and the maritime customers, the European captains. Her role is so much more than just selling slaves. She is, in modern terms, a B2B logistics and finance specialist. Think about the European captain. He's just arrived after 8 weeks at sea. His crew is sick. He's paranoid about the local diseases. He doesn't speak Fawn. He has no idea how to negotiate with the king's court, and he doesn't have the local currency. Remember? The cowrie shells. The queen solves all of this. She's a one-stop shop. She speaks Portuguese, the trade language. She has already negotiated the bulk prices with the Yovogen and the king. She has the barracoons, the food, the water, and most importantly, she controls the specialist canoemen, who are the only ones who can get the cargo from the beach to his ship. She doesn't just trade, she dictates terms. And this is where it gets truly weird. You're probably picturing Europeans trading chests of gold, but that's not what the King of Dahomey wants. He wants guns. He wants gunpowder. He wants high-quality Indian and Dutch textiles, brandy, and iron bars. This leads to the quirky and frankly stupid tidbit of the trade. Many European captains, trying to maximize their profits, would fill their holds with the absolute cheapest, most useless junk they could find back home. They would try to trade crates of second-hand wool coats in tropical West Africa, where the temperature rarely drops below 85 degrees. They'd offer slightly roosted shot muskets, pewter pots, and cheap, ugly glass beads. This is a huge part of the Queen's genius. She is the quality control. A captain tries to offer her a shipment of water-damaged gunpowder, or worse, those ridiculous wool coats. She doesn't just refuse, she laughs in his face. She knows exactly what a top-grade Dutch rifle looks like, and she knows what it's worth in her inventory. She maintains her power by being the most discerning and therefore most trusted broker in Whydah. She guarantees the king gets the high-quality guns he needs to wage his wars. And she guarantees the Europeans get the high-quality product they want, all processed and ready to load. This, of course, brings up a massive, uncomfortable question. Historians still argue whether these powerful African merchants, like the Queen, were truly sovereign, equal partners in this global trade, or if they were, in effect, trapped in a system they couldn't control. Was she a willing and powerful collaborator, or was she just the most successful participant in a devil's bargain? Forced to trade in humans simply to get the firearms she and her king needed to prevent their own. People from being conquered and enslaved by their neighbors who were also armed by the Europeans. Looking at her, though, you don't see a victim. You see a calculator. You see a woman who understands the market better than anyone else. She's not questioning the morality of the system. She's not an abolitionist, and she's not a demon. She's a pragmatist in the most brutal sense of the word. She has identified the single most valuable commodity on Earth, the nexus of cheap labor and Heidman raw materials, and has positioned herself at the absolute center of the spigot. She is a capitalist, and the business, at this precise moment in history, is human beings. You're going to follow her, not into her private compound, but on an official business call. You walk the wide, dusty road that separates the city proper from the line of European forts, and you're heading for the one flying the French Floridalis. This is Fort St. Louis, a smaller but equally imposing version of the Portuguese fort you saw earlier. It's a box of whitewashed stone and brick baking in the sun. A perfect piece of European geometry dropped into the African landscape. And as you get close, you feel the heat radiating off its walls. The whole thing feels ... wrong, like a spaceship. The Queen is not intimidated. She's here on business. She doesn't walk up to the gate alone and ask for entry. Her arrival is an event. First, a runner is sent. Then she appears shaded by a massive, colorful parasol held by an attendant. She has a small retinue, her translator, to serious-looking bodyguards in her personal livery, and a taster, a servant who will sample any food or drink offered to her, just in case. She's not a head of state, but she's treated like one. the French guards at the gate sweating profusely in their blue wool uniforms. Wool, in this climate, another example of that European logistical genius, stiffened to attention. They don't salute her exactly, but they open the massive wooden doors with a speed and respect that is telling. She's not a subject coming to beg. She's a creditor coming to check the books. You follow her into the courtyard, and it's even hotter than outside. The white walls act like a solar oven. The fort is a tiny, self-contained, paranoid world. You see the barracks, a chapel, a smithy, and the factors house the residence of the chief trader. But the most important building, the one she's heading for, is the warehouse. This is where the Leguan cargo is stored. This is the vault she's come to inspect. She's met by the French factor, a man named Monsieur Dubois, who is trying to look calm and is failing miserably. He's pale, sweating, and wearing a ludicrously formal wig that is clearly giving him a heat rash. He bows. She just nods, her expression impossible to read. They don't waste time on pleasantries. They go straight into the warehouse. The air inside is thick with the smell of new cloth, gun oil, cured leather, and the sharp, acidic temps of cheap brandy. It is, you realize, the smell of Europe. This is what leg one of the triangle trade looks like, and the Queen is here to shop. Dubois snaps his fingers, and his own attendants start frantically displaying the wares. They unroll a massive bolt of brightly colored Indian chintz. This is a mainstream historical fact. Textiles were a huge part of the trade. The Queen doesn't just glance at it. She walks over, rubs the fabric between her thumb and forefinger, checking the thread count. She holds it up to the light. She's checking for mildew. She's checking for shoddy dyed work. She knows that the women of the Dahomean court are discerning customers, and she's not about to trade a healthy to 5-year-old man for a bolt of cloth that will fade in the first rain. She nods. This one is acceptable. Next, the guns. Dubois proudly gestures to a crate of muskets, their barrels gleaming. The quirky tidbit here is that the Queen is a known and feared arms expert. She doesn't trust the French factor's word. She gestures to one of her bodyguards, who steps forward. He picks up a musket, inspects the flintlock mechanism, runs a rod down the barrel to check for rust, and even, bizarrely, taps the barrel with a small metal tool. Listening to the ring of the steel, the Queen is listening to. She knows that many Birmingham guns, made specifically for the Africa trade, had barrels that were intentionally made with cheaper, thinner metal, making them just as dangerous to the user as to the target. She is famous for rejecting an entire shipment last year, crippling a British captain's voyage and nearly starting a diplomatic incident. These guns, however, seem to pass the test. Now the price. This is the real negotiation. Dubois, wiping his brow, starts his pitch. He wants 80 units for this entire shipment: the cloth, the guns, the barrels of gunpowder, and 3 dozen casks of brandy. The Queen, through her translator, scoffs. Not a loud scoff, but a quiet, dismissive awe that makes the factor wince. She points to the brandy. Her taster had already sampled it and reported back to her with a subtle hand gesture. It's watered down. The gunpowder, she notes, is in damp casks. The muskets are adequate, but they are not the high-end French models she specifically requested. She'll take the chintz, half the guns, and none of the brandy. She'll give him 30 units for the lot. Dubois looks like he's going to be sick. They go back and forth for 20 minutes. It's a masterpiece of theater. He pleads, she looks bored. He cites his costs. She mentions that the Dutch fort next door just received a new shipment of excellent textiles. Finally, they settle. She'll take the entire shipment, including the watery brandy, for 65 units. But he has to throw in the 200 brass basins he has in the back, which she knows he was hiding because her informants told her they arrived last week. Dubois agrees, looking like a man who just lost a duel. The deal is done. A few notes are made in a ledger. No money changes hands. This entire transaction, this transfer of European manufacturing for a human cargo, has been negotiated like a modern corporate acquisition. This brings up a huge debate. Historians still argue whether this assortment model of tradeware, a unit, one enslaved person was not bought for gold, but for a complex assortal of different goods was, a clever European tactic to offload junk, or a savvy African system of control. The evidence you're seeing suggests the latter. The Queen and the King of Dahomey didn't want gold. They had gold. They wanted a specific, diverse, and high-quality inventory of manufactured goods to run their economy and their military. They used the European need for labor to stock their own kingdom. The queen wasn't a passive victim of European trade. She was its chief procurer. You follow the queen's retinue as she leaves Fort St. Louis, the massive gates closing with a heavy final thud. The factor, Monsieur Dubois, is probably already pouring himself one of those water-down brandies. The queen, however, looks completely unbothered. She's not flushed with victory. She's not even smiling. To her, that wasn't a confrontation. It was just Tuesday. She has her parasol, her guards, and her clear, unhurried path back to her own compound. And as you walk, you realize this wasn't a single brilliant move. This was a system. What you just witnessed was the result of a monopoly, and it's a monopoly she built from scratch with horrifying precision. This didn't happen overnight. You have to imagine her 10 years earlier. She wasn't the queen then. She was just a lopo, one of maybe a dozen merchant princes and princesses in Whydah, all scrapping for the same business. They all had connections, they all had barracoons, they all had access to the canoemen, but they were, for the most part, inefficient. They were traditionalists. They haggled for days, dragging out negotiations in the shade, drinking palm wine, and operating on a who-you-know basis. It was a chaotic relationship-past economy, and the queen saw this chaos, and she hated it. Because chaos isn't profitable. Her great innovation, the one that built her empire, was simple. She replaced relationships with logistics. She was, in essence, the first person in Whydah to truly weaponize the spreadsheet, metaphorically, of course. While her rivals were arguing with a ship's captain over the price of a single cask of gunpowder, she was busy building a process. First, she streamlined her supply. This is a mainstream historical fact. Whydah became the single busiest, most efficient slaving port in West Africa, at one point accounting for nearly 20% of the entire Atlantic trade. That volume meant competition was murderous. The queen's first move was to secure an exclusive bulk rate contract with the Yovogin. She went to the king's governor and made him an offer. My rivals will promise you a high price for 100 captives. I will guarantee you a slightly lower but fixed price for 1,000 captives, paid on time, every single month, in the Hygrid textiles and guns you actually want. She wasn't just undercutting, she was stabilizing. She took the guesswork out of the king's revenue. He no longer had to deal with 10 different flaky merchants. He just had to deal with her. She became his prime distributor. This gave her volume. Next, the service. This is where she destroyed her competition. Remember those canoemen, the ones with the monopoly on getting to the ships? Her rivals would just hire the nearest available crew. The queen put the 50 best canoe paddlers in Whydah on her personal payroll. She paid them a retainer. They worked only for her. This meant that when one of her client captains anchored offshore, he wasn't put in a queue. Her priority canoe team was already paddling out to him before his rivals even knew the ship had arrived. It's the 18th century version of same-day shipping, and it was a revolution. Her rivals were still trying to find a boat, and she was already loading cargo. Then there's the quirky tidbit, her branding. She knew her product was tragically perishable. The Middle Passage was a death sentence for as many as 20% of its passengers. She couldn't control the Atlantic, but she could control the quality at departure. She hired her own physicians separate from the ship's surgeons. Her inventory was fed, watered, and given basic medical care, again, not from kindness, but for profit. She then created a brand. Any captive sold by her was given a small, specificolored bead to wear, or a particular cord of woven fiber. Captains soon learned that her brand meant a lower mortality rate on the crossing. They were buying certified, pre-owned human beings. It's a disgusting concept, but it meant she could charge a 15% premium, and captains were happy to pay it. Historians still argue whether the queen's success was a result of her own singular business genius, or if she was secretly a front. For the king of Dahomey himself, who had tired of the merchant class chaos and wanted to centralize the entire trade through a single ruthless proxy he could control. The answer is probably a bit of both. She served his interests, and in doing so, she built an empire for herself. You watch her as she re-enters her compound. She is the monopoly. She has the best supply, the fastest distribution, and the highest quality brand. Her rivals, they're still back in the market, haggling over those wool coats. She didn't just out-negotiate them, she made them irrelevant. You're starting to get it. You understand the business, the logistics, the religion, and the ruthless efficiency. You see the queen as the unshakable center of this entire terrible universe. But as you watch her over the next few weeks, moving from fort to compound, from negotiation to ritual, you notice something. There's one part of her life that isn't about the immediate dietode profit margin. There's one person who enters her private courtyard without being announced, who doesn't bow, and who she actually looks at with an expression other than calculated boredom. This is her son. He's a young man, perhaps 17 or 18. He's tall, holding himself with a rigid posture that is a perfect, strange blend of his mother's regal calm and a kind of coiled, nervous energy. He is the product of all this. He wears the same fine locally woven cloths as his mother, but you also see a pair of fine leather boots, clearly of European make. He's a walking contradiction. He is the queen's single greatest investment, the focus of all her ambition. This isn't just about her. This is about a dynasty. She's not just building a company, she's building an empire, and empires need heirs. You watch him one afternoon. He's sitting in the shade of the courtyard, not with a musket, but with a ledger. He's learning the family business. This is the mainstream historical fact about these powerful merchant families. Succession was everything. In many West African societies, power and wealth were passed down, but the lines of inheritance were complex. Sometimes they were matrilineal, passed through the mother's line to her brother. But in the case of these new, ultra-wealthy merchant Lopo figures, they were often building a new kind of dynastic model. They were passing their trade contacts, their capital, and their name directly to their children. He is, quite literally, the heir to the throne of this commercial empire. His mother has personally overseen his education. He speaks Fan, of course. He speaks the trade Portuguese of the coast fluently. He can probably understand the Dutch and French he overhears in the forts. He understands the complex math of the commercial exchange rate, and he knows how to spot a watered-down cask of brandy just by the smell. He has been trained since he could walk for one single purpose, to one day take his mother's place and run the entire operation. But his education has been ... curated. This is the quirky, fascinating tidbit. His mother, for all her ruthlessness, has shielded him. He's seen the barracoons, but from the outside. He's met the European captains, but only in the clean, formal setting of the warehouse. After his mother has already concluded the deal, he's never had to stand on the beach in the sweltering sun and haggle with a desperate, fever-ridden slaver. He's never had to personally inspect a damaged human being or order a branding. He's the prince. He's been taught the results of the business, the gold, the fine cloth, the power butt. He has been carefully, lovingly protected from the process. He is, in effect, the first second-generation wealth of this new slaving aristocracy. You see him interact with his mother. It's not warm, not in the way you'd expect. It's professional. He reports to her on the inventory of the palm oil warehouse. She nods, corrects his math on a shipping manifest, and dismisses him. But then, just as he's turning to leave, she'll say something low, in Fan, and he'll stop. She'll adjust the lay of his cloth. It's a tiny, almost invisible gesture of maternal pride and control. He is her masterpiece. And this leads to the central, unanswerable question. Historians still argue whether these powerful, ruthless merchant women viewed their children as genuine family to be loved and protected, or as strategic assets, the ultimate legacy project to be molded and deployed. Watching her, you suspect she doesn't see the difference. To her, loving her son and making him the most powerful man in Whydah are the exact same thing. His success is her love, expressed in the only language she truly trusts, the language of absolute, unassailable power. Now, that plan is entering its second phase. He's mastered Whydah. He understands the local game. But the queen is a visionary. She sees the true source of her client's power. It's not in the forts, it's across the sea. It's in the cities where those textiles are woven and those guns are forged. She's consolidated her power here on the coast. Now, she's going to do something radical, something almost unheard of. She's going to send her heir into the belly of the beast. She's going to send him to London. The decision has been made. It's not a negotiation. It's a royal decree issued by his mother, the queen. The heir is to be sent away. He is going to London. You're standing on the beach, the same beach where the canoes are normally loaded with human cargo. But today, the atmosphere is different. This isn't a cargo run. It's a VIP transport. The queen is here herself, not in her negotiating robes, but in the finest, most intricate cloth her looms can produce. She is a pillar of silent, unreadable authority. Her son stands beside her, dressed in a bizarre and stiflingly hot European traveling suit, all wool and brass buttons. He looks like a parody of a French factor, and you can tell he's already sweating buckets. This journey is the ultimate power move for the Queen. This is a mainstream historical fact. It was not unheard of for powerful African and Afro-European merchant families on the coast to send their children, usually sons, to Europe for an education. It was the 18th century equivalent of sending your kid to an Ivy League university. It was partly for prestige, but mostly it was a hard-nosed business decision. A son educated in London or Paris could read, write, and speak the language of the customer perfectly. He could understand their complex financial systems, their legal contracts, and their market fluctuations. He would, in effect, become the family's inside man, a wide loyal agent operating from within the heart of the European economic empire. The Queen's best canoe team, the priority crew, remember, is here, waiting by a massive 80-foot canoe. But this canoe has been ... customized. A special sheltered seat has been constructed in the middle, shaded by a canopy with cushions. The son is carrying a single, beautifully made leather satchel. His mother, you see, is sending him with a small fortune, not in cowrie shells, but in a form the Europeans understand. Gold dust and, more importantly, a bill of exchange drawn on the account of the French fort, a kind of 18th century traveler's check guaranteed by the Queen's own massive credit line. This entire education, the ship's passage, the London tutors, the fine clothes, the lodging is being paid for, quite literally, by the sale of human beings. He is a walking, talking testament to his mother's profits. The goodbye is not what you'd call tender. There are no tears. The Queen looks at her son. She adjusts his stiff woolen collar, her fingers lingering for just a second. She speaks to him in fawn, her voice too low for you to hear. It's not a comfort, it's a command. Do not fail. He nods, his face a mask of youthful seriousness, and then he turns. He walks to the canoe, and his mother does not watch him go. She turns back toward her compound, her parasol bearer, scrambling to keep her shaded. Her part in this is done. Now, you're in the canoe with him. The paddlers, his mother's employees, treat him with a profound, almost religious respect. He is the Lopovi, the prince. They begin to paddle, chanting a low, rhythmic work song that cuts through the roar of the surf. This is the part of the journey that takes the most skill, the part the Europeans could never master. The canoemen watch the waves, their muscles tensing, and then, with a unified shout, they charge. They punch the canoe through a 10-foot wall of breaking water. For a second, you are airborne, a terrifying lurch, and then you're through. You're in the deep, rolling swells, leaving the lagoon and the coast behind. The city of Whydah, the forts, the barracoons, the Python Temple, it all shrinks, becoming just a green and white line on the horizon. Ahead of you, anchored a mile offshore, is a British ship. It's not a slaver, not this one. It's a general cargo ship heading back to London with palm oil, gold, and ivory. The son's passage was negotiated on this ship to keep him separate from the family business. As you get closer, it's a monster. The wooden hull towers over you, a sheer, man-made cliff. He's handed over his satchel, passed up like a precious relic. He is the only African on this ship who is not in chains. The voyage begins, and it is, for him, a new kind of hell. He's not used to the cold, the damp, the constant motion. He's not used to the food salt beef so hard it could break a tooth, ship's biscuit riddled with weevils. This is the quirky and profoundly ironic tidbit. He, the son of a woman who provisions ships for a living, is suffering from the worst provisioning he's ever experienced. He, whose mother guarantees premium quality, is stuck eating the cheapest swill the British Navy can get away with. It's his first bitter taste of European efficiency when he's the one being provisioned, not the one doing the selling. He spends 8 weeks in this floating wooden prison. He is a profound curiosity to the sailors, a black prince, and they don't know whether to mock him or serve him. He, in turn, keeps his mother's silence. He watches, he learns, he endures. Historians still argue whether these educated children ever truly integrated into European society, or if they were always, inevitably, treated as exotic curiosities, educated pets, who were shown off at parties but never truly accepted as equals. As the ship finally sails up the Thames, past the green fields of Kent, he is about to find out. The air is cold, the sky is a uniform, depressing gray, and the air smells ... wrong. It's the smell of coal smoke, of a million chimneys, a smell that chokes the lungs. He's a long way from the mango trees and python musk of Whydah. He's arrived in civilization. You're standing with him on the docks in London, and the cold is a physical assault. It's not the damp 85-degree heat of Whydah. This is a wet, penetrating cold that gets into his bones, a cold his wool suit can't seem to fight, and the smell, you were prepared for the coal smoke he smelled on the river. But this is ... industrial. It's the smell of smoke, yes, but also of human waste, of tanneries, of horse manure, and of the River Thames itself, which is less a river and more a 200-yard-wide open sewer. And the noise, the rattle of 1,000 iron-shod wagon wheels on cobblestones, the screams of vendors, the churning, muddy chaos. This is the center of the world, and it is, to his Whydah-acclimatized senses, a nightmare. But he is not a victim here. He is a man of means. His mother's letter of credit, drawn on that French fort's London bank, is as good as gold. In fact, it's better. It's clean. It's just a piece of paper, a number in a ledger, disconnected from the smell of the barracoon. Within a week, he is settled. He is no longer the Black Prince from the ship. He is the African gentleman, a profound curiosity. He has fine lodgings in a respectable brick-lined street, perhaps in Bloomsbury, with a real glass window that looks out onto ... another brick wall. He has a tutor, a pinched-looking man from Oxford, who is tasked with finishing his education in mathematics, Latin, and, most importantly, sound financial principles. He is, in short, living a life of unimaginable privilege, all funded by his mother's empire. This is the mainstream historical fact of the era. London, in the late 18th century, was the undisputed financial capital of the world. The City of London, the square mile around the Bank of England, and Lloyd's of London, the insurance market, was the beating heart of the global economy, and that heart was pumping blood that was almost entirely sweet. The sugar trade, built on the backs of the enslaved in the West Indies, was generating a level of wealth that was staggering. It was funding this city. It was building these fine brick houses, paying for that tutor's salary, and filling the warehouses he just passed. His mother's profits from supplying the trade were now being reinvested at the source. He was being taught how to manage his family's money by the very system that money helped to build. He's a quick study. He's smart, just as his mother is. He learns about interest rates, about shipping insurance, about how to buy stock in a company. He's a model student. He is, on the surface, a perfect example of civilization's power to uplift. But then the duality. He's walking back from his tutoring one afternoon, and he passes a print shop. This is the quirky, and for him world-altering tidbit. In Whydah, the Queen's power was absolute. You did not question it. The King of Dahome's power was divine. You could not question it. Here, in this shop window, he sees a piece of paper. It's a political caricature, a crude drawing. It shows two fat, wealthy-looking men in wigs, spoon-feeding each other gold coins over a map of the West Indies. It's a savage, ugly, and public mockery of the very merchants he's being taught to emulate. He's confused. But next to it, he sees another drawing. This one depicts a black man in chains, kneeling. The caption reads, "Am I not a man and a brother?" He stands there on that cold, muddy pavement for a very long time. He has just seen the two halves of London. The city is getting fabulously rich from the slave trade, but it is also the single, undisputed global epicenter of a new, radical, and increasingly loud idea: abolition. This is the great contradiction of the age. The very city that insures the slave ships, that refines the slave-ground sugar, is also the city that hosts the society for effecting the abolition of the slave trade. The coffee houses where he's learning to conduct gentlemanly business are the exact same coffee houses where men like Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce are meeting, planning, and gathering petitions to end that business forever. This is a concept his mind can barely process. In Dahomey, if the king wages war, you do not publicly question his morality. It's treason. It's death. Here, the King of England's own policies are openly, viciously debated in pamphlets and papers sold for a penny on the street. He sees his mother, the Queen, as a force of nature, a pragmatist, and he sees these abolitionists as ... insane. They are trying to destroy the entire global economy, the very engine that is paying for his wool coat and his Latin lessons. Historians still argue whether this burgeoning abolitionist movement was a truly moral awakening, born from the new Enlightenment ideals of human liberty, or if it was, in fact, a coldly pragmatic economic argument in disguise. The new money in England was coming from industrial factories, from the looms in Manchester. These industrialists, who paid their free workers a starvation wage, were in direct competition with the old West Indian sugar money. Was this a fight for the soul of humanity? Or was it just one group of billionaires, the industrialists, trying to kneecap another group of billionaires, the plantation owners? By taking away their unfair labor advantage, the Queen's son doesn't understand this debate. He just sees the contradiction. And for the first time in his life, he has a thought that is not his mother's. He looks at the kneeling figure in the window, and he feels a flash of, not pity, but shame. It's a new, uncomfortable, and deeply disloyal feeling. It's one thing to see a drawing in a shop window. It's another thing to sit in a room full of people who are dedicating their lives to it. His tutor, a man who believes a gentleman should be aware of current affairs, suggests he attend a public lecture. It's part of his education, a way to understand the political landscape of his host country. The lecture is being held in a packed assembly hall, not a church, but it has the same hushed, fervent energy. It's filled with well-dressed men and women, their faces pinched with a kind of righteous, sober intensity. He, of course, is the only black person in the room, and his presence causes a ripple of whispers. They probably assume he is a success story, a freed slave, or a convert, here to lend his authenticity to their cause. They have no idea he is the crown prince of the enemy state. He sits in the back, observing. He's here as a kind of industrial spy, to learn about this bizarre political movement that threatens his family's bottom line. The speaker is not a wild-eyed fanatic. He's a man named Thomas Clarkson, and he's not a preacher. He's an investigator. He's a data analyst. He speaks with a calm, methodical, and absolutely damning precision. He's not shouting about sin, he's presenting a report. And then he unrolls the evidence. This is the mainstream historical fact that changes everything. It's a diagram, a massive poster-sized architectural drawing of a slave ship. He says it's called the Brooks. It's not a painting of a storm or a caricature of a fat merchant. It is a cold, technical, top-down and cross-section view of a cargo hold. And it shows, in tiny, precise black and white figures, exactly how 482 human beings are packed into a space that should hold maybe 100 sailors. They are lying on their backs, like books on a shelf, as the speaker says. They are locked, ankle to wrist. There is no room to sit up. There is no room to turn over. The Queen's son goes cold. Colder than he's been since he arrived in London. He has spent his entire life in Whydah, the city that loads these ships. He has heard the term packed tight from captains, but it was just a business term. He's seen his mother's lieutenants argue with a captain. You can fit 500, not 450. He always assumed it was uncomfortable. He did not assume, this. This is not logistics. This is geometry. This is the efficiency his mother is famous for. This is the diagram of a coffin. His worldview doesn't just crack, it shatters. The eunuchs his mother sells, the inventory in her clean, well-managed barracoons. This is what they are sold for. This is the reality of Leg 2. The premium brand his mother offers, her lower mortality rate. It just means her ships look slightly less like this diagram than her competitors. The shame he felt at the print shop is gone, replaced by a deep, sickening wave of horror. But the speaker isn't done. This is the quirky and truly horrifying tidbit. Clarkson, the investigator, opens a wooden crate he's brought with him. He begins to pull items out and place them on the table. This, he says, holding up a heavy, rusty piece of iron, is a set of leg shackles. He holds up a small, vicious-looking device. This is a thumbscrew for discipline. And then, he holds up a long, metal, scissor-like object with a key at the end. And this, he says, his voice dropping, is the speculum aurum. It is a device for forcing open the jaws of those who, in their despair, attempt to starve themselves, so that they may be force-fed and their value, preserved. The Queen's son stops breathing. He knows that object. He's seen it. He's seen crates of them. He's seen them listed on his mother's own manifests, right next to gunpowder and Indian chintz. He always assumed they were some kind of strange European medical tool, or perhaps for veterinary use. He never, ever asked. It was just stock. It was trade goods. It was one of the many metal objects the European captains demanded. He realizes, in this single soul-destroying moment, that his mother isn't just a supplier to this trade. She's not just selling the people, she's selling the tools, she's selling the thumbscrews, she's selling the speculum aurum. She is, in her quest for one-stop shop efficiency, providing her clients with every single thing they need to perpetuate the horror on that diagram. He stumbles out of the hall. He can't breathe the air in there. He leans against a cold brick wall in a dark alley, and he is sick. Vomiting the fine breakfast, his mother's clean money paid for, onto the civilized cobblestones of London. Historians still argue whether the abolitionist movement's heavy reliance on these shock and awe tactics, the diagrams, the chains, the graphic descriptions of torture, was a genuine attempt to reveal the unvarnished truth, or if it was a calculated early form of atrocitide propaganda designed to manipulate public emotion rather than appeal to logic and economics. But for the Queen's son, the debate is irrelevant. It's not propaganda. He's seen the manifests. He walks back to his fine lodgings in a daze. He looks at his wool coat. He looks at his leather-bound books. He looks at his hands. And he can't get the smell of the barracoon out of his nose. And he can't get the diagram of the brooks out of his head. His mother, the brilliant, powerful, efficient Lopo, is a monster, and he is the heir to her monstrosity. The money in his pocket, the money he's supposed to be learning to reinvest, feels like it's burning a hole through the cloth. You're back in his fine, respectable London lodgings. But it's not a sanctuary anymore. It's a cage. The fine brick walls feel like the walls of a barracoon. The wool coat hanging by the door feels like it's woven from human hair. He's sitting at his polished desk, a stack of crisp, expensive paper in front of him, and he's supposed to be doing his homework. He's supposed to be writing his monthly report to his mother, the Queen. This report is his primary duty. It's meant to prove her investment in him is paying off. It should be a dry financial document. Mother, this month I have mastered the calculation of shipping insurance premiums. I have also learned that investing in government bonds is safer than in company stock, though the yield is lower. My tutor is pleased. Please find enclosed a list of books and winter items I require, the cost of which is. He dips his quill in the ink. He writes, "Dearest Mother," and he stops. His hand is shaking. He can't do it. He can't write about yields and premiums. All he can see is the diagram of the brooks. He sees the packed-in, shelf-like figures. He sees the speculum aurum on Thomas Clarkson's lecture table. He picks up the piece of paper, and it feels as heavy as a leg shackle. He crumples it. He's terrified. You have to understand, he doesn't just love his mother. He fears her. She is the sun in his solar system, a being of absolute, unquestionable power. To question her is like questioning the existence of Dangbi, the Python god. It's not just rude, it's blasphemy. It's a fundamental unraveling of the way the world works. But he can't not say something. The horror of the Brooks diagram has burned a hole in his loyalty. So, he tries a new tactic. He can't accuse her. He can't appeal to her morality, a word that has no place in her ledgers. He has to appeal to the one God she truly, unquestionably worships, profit. He must frame this existential horror as a market risk. He takes a new sheet of paper. He writes, "Mother, my studies progress. However, my tutor has impressed upon me the importance of understanding political currents as they affect market stability. I must report on a situation here in London that I believe poses a significant long-term threat to our family's primary enterprise." He pauses, reading it back. Yes, good threat, stability, enterprise. She will read this, he continues, explaining the abolitionist movement. He's not describing the moral outrage. He's describing a hostile corporate takeover. There is a well-funded and organized lobby here, he writes. They are not just rabble. They are wealthy industrialists, religious leaders, and even members of parliament. Their stated goal is the total legal cessation of the Atlantic trade. This is the mainstream historical fact he's just learned. By the late 1780s, the abolitionist movement was a machine. In 1 year, they organized over 100 petitions to Parliament, signed by nearly 100,000 people. He explains this to her. They are not just talking, they are organizing. They are introducing bills in their Parliament to make our business illegal. He knows this will get her attention. The Yovajan worries about the French fort attacking the English fort. His mother worries about Parliament attacking her customer base. Then he brings in the quirky and brilliant tidbit, the sugar boycott. This is one of the first and most successful mass consumer boycotts in history. Their methods are insidious, he writes. They are convincing the populace, especially the women who do the household shopping, to refuse to purchase sugar from the West Indies. They are distributing pamphlets claiming the sugar is polluted with blood. They are even drinking their tea without sugar as a political statement. You can almost picture the Queen in Whydah reading this and scoffing. Refuse sugar? A political statement. These Europeans are insane, but her son knows how to land the punch. This is not just madness, mother. It is working. The West India planters are in a panic. The price of sugar in Bristol has become volatile. If this boycott holds, or if it spreads to coffee or cotton, the leg 3 feet profit margin for our clients collapses. If their profits collapse, what will happen to their demand for our inventory? What happens to the price you can charge for premium service? He's done it. He's translated a moral crusade into a supply-and-demand crisis. He has her full, undivided, and furious attention. Now, his hand is shaking again. He has to ask the real question, the one that's keeping him awake. The one about the speculum aurum. He can't let it go. He frames it as brand damage. Finally, on the matter of our assortment of goods, the abolitionists are using our own inventory against us. At a public lecture, the speaker displayed several items, including the disciplinary tools and the force-feeding implements that we supply on request. He explained their function in graphic detail. The public reaction was not financial. It was ... visceral. It has given them their single most powerful propaganda tool. Mother, is it true? Is this what those tools are for? And if so, I must ask, from a risk management perspective, is the small profit we make from selling these metal parts worth the catastrophic damage it is doing to the public image of the entire trade? Perhaps we should cease to offer these specific items. It would be a goodwill gesture to our clients' political allies, and it would disarm our enemies of their most potent weapon. He seals the letter. He doesn't send it with his usual financial dispatches. He gives it to the captain of a fast merchant ship, along with a significant bonus from his own allowance, to ensure it is delivered directly and only to his mother's hand. Historians still argue whether the educated African children who returned from Europe were more effective as insider agents for their families able to navigate the white man's world, or if almost universally, the Enlightenment ideals they absorbed made them cultural time bombs, who inevitably clashed with and disrupted their home societies. The Queen's son doesn't know, he just knows he's lit a fuse. The letter is on the ocean. It will take 2 months to get to Whydah. He now has to wait in the cold, gray, civilized city that has just ripped his entire world apart for the explosion. You're on the deck of a ship again, but this time, you're not a boy. It's been 3 years. 3 years of London cold, London coal smoke, and London ideas. You're a man now, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored, and suffocatingly hot European suit. You're staring at that familiar, hazy green and white line on the horizon. Whydah, you can already smell it. A mile offshore, that unmistakable thick, living scent of wood smoke, salt, and rot. And as you stand there, your London-trained mind is a battlefield. You're not just coming home. You're an operative, a missionary, an infiltrator. You've come back to save your mother's soul, whether she wants you to or not. The priority canoe is slicing through the deep swells. The same paddlers, their muscles gleaming with sweat, are chanting the same work song. But they look at you differently. You're not the Lopovi, the prince, anymore. You're this thing, this strange, stiff-backed creature in the absurd wool suit. You're an outsider. They treat you with the same professional respect. You are the Queen's property. After all but, the easy familiarity is gone. Your cargo, as the canoe hits the beach with a grinding thud, you step out. The heat, it's not air, it's a physical blow. It's a 100-degree, 100 humidity wall of heat that sucks the air from your lungs and makes your fine wool suit feel like a suit of armor. You're sweating instantly, profusely. And you look down the beach. The forts are there, the market is buzzing, and the high mud brick walls of your mother's barracoons are there, a new one having been built in your absence, and you can't unsee it. Your mind, trained in London logic, superimposes the Brooks diagram onto your own home. You see the inventory not as units, but as the packed, suffocating shelf-like figures. You walk through the city, and it's a gauntlet. The smells, the sounds, the near-necked children, the sacred pythons slithering across the path, it all feels primitive to you now. You hate yourself for the thought, but it's there. You're a man of two worlds, and you're at war with both of them. Your mother, the queen, is not on the beach. She is not waiting at the gate. You are the one who left. You are the one who must return. You walk into the familiar, shaded courtyard of your childhood, and she is there. She is in the exact same spot you left her, sitting on the same carved stool, wearing the same style of impossibly expensive cloth. She has not aged a day. She is a statue of pure, unshakable power. She's not alone. Her lieutenants, the men who run the barracoons and the canoe teams, are with her. This is not a family reunion. This is a performance review. This is the mainstream historical fact. West African royal courts, and by extension, the compounds of Lopo figures like the Queen, operated on deep, complex, and ironclad rules of etiquette. A greeting was not just a hello. It was a reinforcement of the social hierarchy. You were expected to bow, to use specific honorifics, to show deference in a precise, choreographed way. You stand there, sweating in your wool. You know the ritual, but you've spent 3 years learning to bow in a ballroom, not prostrate yourself in a courtyard. You hesitate, and in that hesitation, you are lost. You give a short, stiff, European-style bow from the neck. A nod. The courtyard falls silent. The drumming from the Python Temple, 200 yards away, suddenly sounds like a hammer. A gasp, quickly stifled, comes from one of the attendants. You haven't just been rude. You have, in one motion, declared yourself a foreigner. The Queen looks at you. Her eyes, which you remembered as calculating, are now just ... cold. She says nothing. She just waits. She addresses you, in fawn, her voice like silk. You have been gone. The investment returns. You open your mouth to reply in fawn, but the words are rusty. The complex tonal language of your childhood is gone, replaced by the flat Anglo-Saxon cadence of London. The words come out haltingly wrong. Your accent is thick with the fog of the Thames. It's crack number 2. You sound like a missionary, not a son. She smiles. It's the most terrifying thing you have ever seen. It's not a smile of welcome. It's a smile of supreme, biting irony. This is the quirky tidbit. She received your letter. Oh yes, she read every single word about the Brooks diagram, the market risk, the sugar boycott, and the speculum aurum. She's been waiting for this moment for 2.5 years. She never wrote back. She gestures to your suit. The English have dressed you like a corpse, she says in fawn, her words now sharp and clear. Did they teach you anything, or did they just teach you to be ashamed? This is it. This is the moment. Your carefully planned, logical, profit-based arguments. They dissolve in the heat. You're not a London financier. You're a terrified, furious son. Mother, you say, the word sounding alien in your own mouth. I have seen what they do with what we sell. I have seen the diagrams. I have seen the tools. It is an abomination. It is a sin against God, and it must stop. The heir leaves the courtyard. The lieutenant's hands go to the hilts of their machetes. Not against you, it's a reflex. You haven't just insulted the Queen, you have insulted the King, the Whydah, and the entire economic structure of the kingdom. You have used the abolitionists' words. Historians still argue whether these educated Africans who returned from Europe were ever truly trusted again. Were they seen as valuable insider agents who could navigate the white man's world? Or were they, as seems more likely, viewed as dangerously corrupted individuals, whitewashed and rendered useless for the hard realities of local power and politics? The Queen looks at you, and all the calculation is gone, replaced by a deep, final, bottomless disappointment. She doesn't see her son. She sees a failed investment. She sees a damaged unit. She sees a product she sent abroad for finishing that has come back broken. She stands up, and for the first time you realize she is shorter than you. You are not my son, she whispers. So low only you can hear it, the words cutting deeper than any machete. My son is a fawn. He is a man of Dahomey. He understands power. You, she gestures, dismissing your entire being, from your leather shoes to your sweat-soaked hair, are a European. A pale, babbling, stupid European. She turns her back on you. The performance review is over. You have been fired. You're frozen. The courtyard is still silent, the lieutenants and attendants looking anywhere but at you, their Queen having dismissed you with that one brutal sentence. She's gone, back into the cool, dark interior of her private rooms. You're left standing in the oppressive 100-degree heat, a living statue of a failed investment. Your wool suit is a joke. Your London education is a joke. You've been cast out, but you're not physically cast out. That's the cruelest part. She doesn't have you thrown into the street, you're still her son, and she is in her way. Still the queen, you're simply ... irrelevant. You are demoted from heir to guest. You are given a room, a nice one, of course. This is still a Lopos compound, but you are given no duties. You are not invited to her negotiations. You are not asked to review the manifests. You are a ghost haunting your own childhood home. This, you realize, is her true punishment. Not a quick, angry exile, but a slow, quiet, social death. And it is in this strange limbo, over the next few weeks, that the great generational debate happens. It's not one argument. It's a series of them, like grinding, painful skirmishes in a war that's already been lost. You try to corner her a few days later, she's in the courtyard, inspecting a new bolt of Indian chintz. The chintz, it's all still happening. You've shed the wool suit, finally, and you're wearing simple local cloth, a desperate failed attempt to look like the son she lost. You try your London logic one more time. The market risk argument. Mother, please, you say. Your fawn, still clumsy. Forget the morality. Just listen to the business. The British are not just talking. They have a fleet. They have squadrons they're sending to this very coast. They will make this illegal. They will use cannons. What happens to our enterprise when the British Navy becomes the customer? She doesn't even look up from the cloth. She rubs it between her fingers, just as you've seen her do 100 times. The English, she says, her voice bored. They are your new gods, aren't they? You've been gone 3 years. I have been here 40. The English come, they wave their Bibles. The French come, they wave their brandy. The Portuguese come, they wave their crucifixes. And all of them, every single one, comes to my door to buy. They will always buy, because their morality ends where their profit begins. You talk of cannons, my son, this is Dahomey. The king's cannons are the only ones that matter on this soil. You've forgotten where the real power is. It's a brick wall. So, a week later, you try the other argument, the real one, the one from your heart. You've spent sleepless nights, your mind filled with the Brooks diagram. You've taken a piece of charcoal, and you've redrawn it on the wall of your room, the horrifying geometric packing of human bodies. You find her when she's alone, at dusk, just as the drums from the Python temple are starting their evening rhythm. I don't care about the market, you burst out, the words tumbling. I care about this. You've brought a smaller drawing. You unroll it. I saw this. Mother, this is what we are doing. This is what you are funding. This is the ... the speculum aurum. Do you know what they do with it? You expect her to be angry, to have you whipped. Instead, she just looks at the drawing. She looks at your face, contorted with a pain she finds ... perplexing. And then she gives her real, final, and most devastating rebuttal. Yes, she says, her voice quiet. I know, I've seen the ships. You're stunned. You ... you know, and you call this wrong. She interrupts, and now her voice has the steel you remember. You, who have eaten civilized food your entire life. You, who have never had to plant a yam or fire a musket in your life. Let me tell you what is wrong, you child. Before the Europeans came, when the king's armies fought the oil, what do you think happened to the prisoners? The inventory. This is the mainstream historical fact that underpins her entire worldview. They were killed, she spits. They were sacrificed to the Vodun. Their heads were stacked by the palace gates. They were taken to a field and left to die. It was waste. It was chaos. I, and she taps her own chest, I am the one who brought order. I am the one who told the Yovagin, who told the king, do not kill them, do not waste them. They have ... value. I am not the source of this war, you fool. I am the manager. I am the one who turns a certain death into a chance at life, even a life in chains. You are speechless. This is her justification. This is the great, terrible, and unassailable logic of her empire. She's not a monster. She's a recycler. She's an efficiency expert who turned a waste product of war into the most valuable commodity on earth. What about the ones who aren't prisoners of war? You choke out, desperate, the ones kidnapped, the ones sold for a small debt. This is the quirky, awful tidbit. She laughs. A real, genuine, and chilling laugh. The man who sells his own cousin for a cask of brandy. the woman who sells her neighbor's child for a bolt of that fine chintz. You think I created that weakness? You think human greed was invented by me? The Whydah teach us that the world is a balance. The python god Dong Bi does not ask the rat why it is weak, it just eats. I do not make the world, I just see it. The strong survive, the weak ... are inventory. Historians still argue whether the Atlantic trade was a monstrous corruption of existing smaller-scale African systems of servitude and warfare, or if it was, in fact, a brand new economic machine that actively created and incentivized new, unprecedented levels of violence, kidnapping, and social collapse for the specific purpose of profit. You, the son, are screaming the new machine theory. Your mother, the queen, is the pragmatic management theory. You have no answer for this. Your London morality, your Enlightenment ideals, your black and white diagrams, they are nothing against her 100-proof West African pragmatism. She is not evil. She is, in her own mind, order. She is sense. She is the one who saw the world as it is and had the courage to profit from it. And you are just a babbling, useless, civilized child. You look at her, this small woman who is an empress, and you know you've lost. You haven't just lost the argument. You've lost your past, and you've lost your future. You are utterly and completely alone. You're a non-person, a ghost. You spend your days in a state of suspended animation, trapped by the humidity and your own uselessness. You're the failed investment, and you're now living on the charity of the woman you tried to lecture. You eat her food, you sleep under her roof, and in return, you have a front row seat to watch the enterprise you find so abhorrent continue to thrive without you. You're a walking, talking monument to a failed moral crusade, and your mother, the queen, seems to relish it. The business of Whydah continues. The canoes still punch through the surf. The lieutenants still come to the courtyard to report on their inventory. The French and Portuguese captains still come to haggle, and you sometimes overhear your mother's bored, cutting voice from the warehouse, rejecting a bolt of damp chintz or a crate of water-it-down brandy. It is, for you, a daily living torture. Every sound, every smell is a reminder of the Brooks diagram. Every drumbeat from the Python temple sounds like a hammer blow on your skull. You tried to stop the machine, and the machine didn't even notice. It just ... sidestepped you. But then, after months of this, you do notice something. You're the ghost, remember? And ghosts see things. People stop guarding their words around you. You're just the queen's soft-headed European boy. You're not a threat, so you're there, in the shade of the courtyard, pretending to read one of your nouseless London books, when a new kind of visitor arrives. He's not a ship's captain. He's not wearing the sun-bleached, sweat-stained linens of a slaver. He's ... clean. He's wearing a sober, dark suit, almost like a banker. And he's not Portuguese or French, he's English. One of your people, the ones you tried to warn her about, he's not here for inventory. He's here to see her. And here's the strangest part. Your mother, the queen, meets with him. But this time, she dismisses her usual retinue. She dismisses her translator. She dismisses everyone. And then, in a voice you've never heard her use before, halting. Accented but functional English she must have picked up from decades of trade and kept hidden as a secret weapon she begins to negotiate. You can't hear all of it, but you hear words, not units, not guns, not assortals. You hear casks. You hear acres. You hear processing. You hear Liverpool. You've been so wrapped up in your own moral disgust. You've been blind. You thought your letter, your arguments, your return. You thought it all failed. You thought she was a monster, yes, but a static one. A dragon sitting on a pile of human skulls. You were wrong. She's not a dragon. She's a calculator. And she listened. This is the mainstream historical fact you, in your London-centric arrogance, forgot. The Slave Trade Act of 1807 didn't just appear out of nowhere. The 2 decades leading up to it were a period of intense, agonizing decline for the slavers. The abolitionist movement, the one you wrote her about, was working. It was making the trade politically toxic. British naval patrols were becoming more aggressive, even before the act, seizing ships on technicalities. Insurance premiums for slave ships, the very market force you tried to explain to her, were skyrocketing. It was becoming a high-risk, high-cost, and increasingly low-margin business. And your mother, the queen, the logistics genius, the woman who ran her empire on information, ... She didn't need your letter to tell her the market was changing. Your letter was just the confirmation. It was the final data point from her inside man. Her failed inside mang that her own projections were correct. The inventory in human beings was about to become a catastrophically bad investment. And this is the quirky, brilliant tidbit. She was already pivoting. What's the one thing this part of West Africa has in limitless, self-renewing supply, besides people? Palm trees. And what was the new industrializing Europe, with its factories and its machines, suddenly desperate for lubricant? Palm oil. It was the crude oil of the 18th century. It was used to make soap. It was used to make candles. And most importantly, it was used to grease the giant, screaming metal gears of the new industrial revolution. The queen wasn't just a slave trader. She was a commodity broker, and she was about to corner the market on the next big thing. While you were busy crying over the morality of the speculum aurum, she was busy buying up thousands of acres of palm plantations. While you were redrawing the Brooks diagram, she was designing a new, more efficient cask for shipping the oil. This is the great unanswered question. Historians still argue whether this pivot by powerful West African merchants from human trafficking to legitimate commerce like palm oil was a moral decision, driven by the new abolitionist ideas, or a purely economic one. Was the queen horrified by your letter? Or was she just horrified by the volatile market for sugar you described? Standing in that courtyard, you know the answer. She laughed at your morality. She acted on your market analysis. She took your warning, your one, single, useful contribution. And she used it to secure her own future. She is, in this moment, diversifying her assets. She's not stopping the slave trade, not yet. That's still her cash cow. But she's hedging. She's building a new, clean empire right alongside the old, dirty one. The profits from one are funding the construction of the other. It's the most brilliant and most insulting thing she could have possibly done. She didn't reject your idea. She rejected you. And now, as you watch her shake the clean Englishman's hand, a new, terrible, and horribly ironic thought pops into your head. She has a failed investment, you, who speaks perfect English, understands clean European finance, and is currently doing nothing. And she has a new clean enterprise that needs a manager. You realize, with a cold, sinking dread, that your punishment is about to enter a new and far more twisted phase. Your mother doesn't waste time. The failed investment has sat on her books, depreciating for long enough. A few days after you witness the meeting with the clean Englishman, she summons you. It's not to the courtyard this time, it's to a new building you hadn't paid much attention to along. Low wooden warehouse near the lagoon, but significantly downwind from the barracoons. The smell here is ... different. It's not the metallic, sour smell of human misery. It's a thick, cloying, grassy sweet, and slightly rancid odor. It's the smell of palm oil. A significant upgrade in olfactory horror, to be sure, but still a long way from a London rose garden. She is standing there, not with her lieutenants, but with the Englishman from the other day. He nods at you a quick, curt gesture, as if you're a new clerk. "This is my son," the Queen says to the Englishman in her halting secret weapon English. "He is my London man. He will ... handle the new enterprise." The Englishman looks relieved. He's been dealing with translators and a cultural gap now. He's got someone who speaks his language in every sense. He starts talking to you, fast, about caskilling, rancidity, and shipping schedules. Your mother watches you. This is a test. Can her broken, Europeanized toy do anything useful? You find yourself instinctively slipping back into your London persona. You answer his questions. You use the words bill of lading and net weight. You correct his assumption about the local harvest cycle. The Englishman is delighted. Your mother is ... satisfied. She turns and walks out, leaving you there with him. You have a new job. This is the mainstream historical fact of the era, as the 18th century bled into the 19th. The very same merchant families who had built their empires on the slave trade were one by one pivoting to legitimate commerce. This was the new British-endorsed model. Africa was to cease being a source of labor and become a source of raw materials for the Industrial Revolution. And you, in your ridiculous, heat-stroked, London-educated misery, have just been put in charge of the Queen of Whydah's entire legitimate portfolio. You are given a new ledger. It's crisp, the pages are clean, and it smells of paper and ink, not blood and brandy. She has given you control of the palm oil, the palm kernels a byproduct, the ivory which you find only marginally better, and the gum coppola tree resin used in varnish. She has, in one move, given you exactly what you asked for: a clean business, a moral enterprise. And now, the quirky and logisticalactar tidbit. This business is hard. You thought the other business was just a matter of opening a gate? This palm oil trade is a logistical disaster. Your mother, in her genius, has handed you the single biggest startup headache on the continent. The oil is harvested by local families miles inland. You have to arrange to get it. It has to be stored. It goes rancid in the heat, so it has to be processed fast. And the casks, the Europeans demand it in casks, but the casks leak. The wooden staves shrink and warp in the heat, and the thick orange oil seeps out onto the sand. You're not just a trader now, you're a cooperage manager, trying to figure out how to keep a wooden bucket from leaking in a 100-degree inferno. You're pretty sure this is a specific circle of hell. But the true exquisite torture of your new position is this: the money. You have your clean ledger, but you need to buy casks. You need to pay the canoemen, who now have to haul leaky 600-pound casks of oil, not people. You need to buy up more palm plantations to scale the business. You need capital. And where does the capital for the clean ledger come from? It comes from her. Once a week, you have to go to her, your clean ledger in hand, and present your expenses report. She listens, nods, and then she gestures to one of her other lieutenants, the one who does run the barracoons, and he hands you a bag of cowries or a bill of exchange, drawn directly from the profits of that day's inventory sale. Historians still argue whether the 19th century shift to legitimate commerce was a genuine moral or economic clean break from the slave trade, or if it was in fact the most brilliant and successful act of mass-scale money laundering in history. The clean palm oil trade was, in countless cases, capitalized entirely by the dirty slave trade. The same merchants, the same credit lines, the same families. You, her son, are the living embodiment of that debate. You are the Queen's firewall. You are the one who gets to talk to the polite English traders from Liverpool, the ones who are also abolitionists, the ones who find the other trade distasteful. They are delighted to deal with you, the civilized, English-speaking, legitimate son. They shake your hand, they take your clean oil, and they never, ever ask where you got the seed money to build such a massive operation so fast. You're not a ghost anymore, you're not the heir. You are the minister of not slaves. You are the clean face. You're not just a failed investment, you've been repurposed. You are officially her chief money launderer. And as you walk back to your rancid, leaking but moral warehouse, you have to admit, with a sickening, hollow feeling, it's the most brilliant, cynical, and undefeated move she could have possibly made. You are now the perfect, respectable, civilized son. You have your own office in the new warehouse. The air is thick with the cloying, greasy smell of palm oil, a smell that clings to your European clothes and gets into your hair. You're pretty sure you'll never smell clean again. But this, you've told yourself, is the smell of legitimate commerce. This is the smell of your moral high ground. You've even, to your mother's grudging satisfaction, figured out the cask claking problem. The solution was to force the coopers to soak the staves in the lagoon's brackish water for a week to swell them before assembly. It was a logistical nightmare, but it worked. You are, on paper, a model executive. Your days are a blur of ledgers. You have the clean ledger, the one you show your mother. In it, you meticulously record cost of 500 casks, payment to Canadians for 80 tons of oil, shipping insurance, Liverpool bound. She reviews it once a month. She doesn't praise youth, that's not her way. But you can see the quiet, calculating approval in her eyes. The failed investment is finally, paying dividends. The palm oil enterprise is booming, and you are, as she'd hoped, a ruthlessly efficient manager. But you have a secret. You have a second ledger. This one is hidden under a loose floorboard in your office, right next to a small, heavy bag of gold dust. This is your ledger. You, her son, the Queen's heir, have learned the single most important lesson she ever taught you, the one she taught you by firing you. Always have a separate set of books. You've become a brilliant, cold-blooded embezzler. You, the London-educated financier, are now using your skills for a purpose your tutor never intended. When you report cost of 500 casks to your mother, you've inflated the price by 15%. When you report the payment to Canadians, you've added a hazard pay surcharge that doesn't exist. And when the final payment comes in from Liverpool, a bill of exchange from the Clean, Englishman UVE skimmed 10% off the top, reporting a slightly lower market price than what you actually received. You are laundering your mother's money from your mother. You are building a slush fund. This is the mainstream historical fact that no one likes to talk about. Moral crusades are expensive. The Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade, the one that broke your brain in London, wasn't just a group of well-meaning gentlemen. It was a professional, high-cost lobbying firm. They needed money for everything, to print the tens of thousands of pamphlets, like the Brooks diagram, to pay investigators like Thomas Clarkson to ride 35,000 miles on horseback, gathering evidence to rent the lecture halls, and to wine and dine the members of Parliament. It was a war, and it needed a war chest. You are now the chief, an entirely unwilling fundraiser. You've re-established contact with your civilized allies. This is the quirky and profoundly dangerous tidbit of your new life. You reusing the palm oil trade itself as your offshore bank. You can't just send a bag of gold. Your mother's spies are everywhere, and she trusts no one, especially you. So, you use the clean Englishman, the palm oil buyer. You make a deal. You write a clean letter to him, a letter your mother can and will intercept and read. Mr. Harris, it says, the next shipment is of inferior quality. We must discount it by 20% to retain your business. Your mother reads this, summons you, and screams at you for an hour about quality control. You take the verbal beating. You promise it will never happen again. But what actually happens is this. You ship him your highest quality oil. He buys it at the 20% discounted price. And then, back in London, he sells it at full price and deposits the 20% difference into a bank account in Bloomsbury, an account held in trust for the society. It is white-collar crime as a revolutionary act. You are laundering your family's fortune to destroy your family's business. This is your new life, a life of complete, soul-crushing duplicity. You are the clean son, the manager of the legitimate enterprise, and you are also the secret, subversive traitor, funneling your mother's profits into the hands of her greatest enemies. You've become her. You are a pragmatist. You are a logistician. You are a liar, and you are, finally, in the most twisted way imaginable, the true heir to her legacy. Historians still argue whether the legitimate traitors who acted as the clean face for abolition were truly moral agents, or if they were in fact just savvy capitalists using a new popular ideology to break the old coastal monopolies like the Queen's and force their way into the African interior for their own new enterprises. You don't care about the Englishman's motives. You don't care if he's a saint or just a different kind of python. He is, for now, your Konemon, and he's helping you move your secret cargo. One day, a crate of replacement parts arrives from him. Buried under a pile of cask staves is a small, wrapped package. It's not money. It's a copy of the Brooks diagram, freshly printed, and at the bottom, a new caption, in a new typeface, funded by a friend of humanity. You stare at it, the rancid smell of the palm oil in your nose, and you feel the most profound and most terrible sense of victory. It's working. You're standing in your warehouse, the thick, greasy smell of the palm oil, a constant, inescapable part of your life. The Queen's business is thriving, both of them. The inventory in the barracoons is still moving, and your legitimate palm oil exports are, to your mother's quiet satisfaction, exceeding her projections. You are, in every outward way, a model of success, the dutiful son, the efficient manager, the civilized face of a new, clean Whydah. And you are, in your soul, a hollowed-out, successful fraud. You've been at this for 2 years. 2 years of skimming, of cooking the books, of inflating your expenses, and of conducting your secret high-stakes, long-distance discount arrangement with Mr. Harris in Liverpool. Your hidden ledger, the one under the floorboard, is now filled with coded entries. That hidden bag of gold dust has grown, been depleted, and grown again. You've become a master criminal, living under the nose of the most powerful and ruthless merchant on the West African coast. And what has it all been for? You don't see the results. Not here. Here, nothing changes. The drums still beat, the Queen still negotiates, the canoes still punch through the surf. You feel like you're just pouring your stolen gold into a hole in the ocean. Until another parts crate arrives from Mr. Harris. This one doesn't have a hidden diagram. It has a book. It's a small, cheaply bound volume. The cover reads, "The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Whydah Equiano," and inside, tucked into the title page, is a handwritten note from Harris. This is our bestseller. It reads, "Your last discount funded the 5th printing." We can't keep them on the shelves. You sit there in your rancid office and you read. You read the words of a man who was stolen, who survived the inventory, who survived the Brooks diagram horror of the Middle Passage, who survived the plantations, and who bought his own freedom. A man who, unlike you, can tell his story in his own voice. And you realize with a jolt, this is where your money is going. You are funding a revolution. This is the mainstream historical fact of the era. The abolitionist movement was the world's first large-scale mass media human rights campaign. It was a print revolution. They didn't just write a few letters to Parliament, they inundated the entire British Isles with information. This is what your 10% tax on your mother's enterprise is paying for. It's paying for the printing presses to run day and night. It's paying for the paper tons and tons of it to print, not just Equiano's narrative, but hundreds of thousands of leaflets, pamphlets, poems, and sermons. They're dropping them in coffee houses, handing them out at church doors, and slipping them into the hands of factory workers. Your money is quite literally giving the movement a voice, and not just in print. The note from Mr. Harris mentions the lecture circuit. This is the quirky and profoundly brilliant tidbit. Your slush fund is now being used to hire speakers. The movement had realized that while white gentlemen like Thomas Clarkson were effective at presenting data, they were not the headline act. The real soul-shaking power came from the authenticity of those who had lived it. Your money your mothers laundered, skimmed, and re-laundered, money is paying the travel, lodging, and protection fees for freedmen, for former sailors, and for other educated Africans to tour the country. You, who were dismissed as a failed European-acuted African, are now secretly bankrolling an entire class of successful ones. You are paying for them to stand on stages in London, Bristol, and Manchester, and tell the exact same truths that got you disowned in your mother's courtyard. Historians still argue whether this mass media print revolution was the primary driver that turned public opinion and forced Parliament's hand, or if it was all just a softening up for the real work, which was the backroom economic lobbying. Did the heart of the nation change, or did the wallet just find a new argument? They debate if the public was truly morally outraged, or if they were just skillfully manipulated by one of the most sophisticated propaganda campaigns in history. You don't care about that debate. You are the son of a woman who believes in logistics, and you are now seeing the logistics of a moral war. You are seeing that an idea, not a man and a brother, is not enough. That idea needs to be printed. It needs to be shipped. It needs a budget. And you, the Minister of Not Slaves, are the Queen's single biggest and most ironic investor. You are the secret, silent, and disgusted patron of the entire abolitionist print revolution. You've looked at your mother's system and you've found her one single blind spot. Her arrogant assumption that you were a failure, and you are exploiting it. For every ton of clean palm oil you ship, you are funding 1,000 dirty pamphlets. And it's working. You are, in your own mind, just a fundraiser. A glorified white-collar criminal, stealing from a monster to fund a crusade. You're the money man, and you've made your peace with that. You ship your legitimate oil, you skim your dirty 10%, and you fund the print revolution that is, you hope, slowly changing the hearts and minds of a nation across the sea. You are, in short, a passive participant. But then, a letter from Mr. Harris arrives, hidden in another part's crate. This one is not a thank you, it's a request. Our friends in Parliament are at a critical juncture. It reads, "The West India lobby is formidable. They are telling the Select Committee that the trade is humane, necessary, and that any disruption will bankrupt the Crown. They are, in short, lying with statistics. We have the moral argument, we lack the specifics. We have the diagram of the Brooks, they have the shipping manifests. We need ... data. You stare at that word, data. You, the Minister of Not Slaves, the man who sits in the rancid-smelling warehouse, are suddenly flooded with a terrible, cold, and powerful realization. You've been funding the sermons. You've been ignoring the ledger. You've been so focused on your own clean books, you'd almost forgotten about hers. But your new legitimate enterprise is not a separate entity. It's a department. It's a cost center within the larger Queen of Whydah financial empire. And in the last 2 years, as you've proven your utility and your efficiency, your mother has grown ... complacent. She has, in her arrogance, let you, her London man, see the master ledgers. She has, on occasion, even asked you to audit them, to apply your Whiteman's math to her inventory sheets to find new You realize the only abolitionist on earth who doesn't just know the trade is evil. You know what it costs. You know to the cowrie shell what a grade A male is worth. You know the exact assortment of goods to Birmingham muskets. 4 bolts of chintz, 1 cask of watered-down brandy required for purchase. You know her turnaround time, 48 hours. You know her supply chain, a standing bulk rate contract with the Ovigin. You know her market share, an estimated 60% of Whydah's exports. You know the names of the ships. You know the captains she prefers to deal with. This is the mainstream historical fact that will turn the tide. The final, successful push for the 1807 Slave Trade Act was not won by poetry, it was won by evidence. It was won by men like Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce standing before parliamentary select committees and not just displaying a speculum aurum, but presenting irrefutable line-item proof that the trade was not just immoral, but also a wasteful, inefficient, and strategically dangerous business that was killing more British sailors than it was worth. They had to counter the West India lobby's economic necessity argument. You are the man who can give them the cannonballs for that fight. You are no longer a fundraiser. You are an informant. You are a traitor. So, you begin a new kind of letter. This is the quirky and profoundly ironic tidbit of your treason. You write your report using the exact sterile financial language your London tutor taught you, the same language you use for your clean palm oil manifests. You are, in effect, writing a due diligence report on your mother's dirty enterprise for the express purpose of liquidating it. You write to Mr. Harris Ree, the primary enterprise. Please find enclosed a summary of overhead costs and profit. As you can see from column A, the raw material cost of a unit is fixed by royal decree. As per column B, the value add from processing, i.e., branding, feeding, and provoyage quarantine allows our CEO to charge a 15% premium over her competitors. Note the exclusivity contract with the Candyman in Appendix 1, which creates a logistical monopoly and guarantees a 48 Horton round, a key selling point for her clients. You're not just sending a letter, you're sending a spreadsheet. You are in this single cold-blooded act of intellectual betrayal, weaponizing the very education your mother paid for. You are using the Whiteman's math to destroy the black woman's empire. Historians still argue whether the 1807 Act was passed because the British public finally found a conscience, the print revolution you funded, or because the parliamentary committees were finally given the insider data they needed to win the economic argument against the slavers' lobby. Was it the heart or the wallet? You, sitting in your rancid office, your hands shaking, know the truth. It's both. And you are now single-handedly running both operations. You are the emotional funder and the rational informant. You seal the letter, hiding it not in a crate this time, but in the false bottom of a legitimate palm oil cask. You are, in every sense, the ultimate double agent, using your mother's clean business to smuggle the very information that will be used to execute her dirty one. It's been a year, a long, humid, nervous-reading year since you smuggled your spreadsheet in the bottom of that palm oil cask. Your life has settled into a nauseating two-fist rhythm, managing the clean enterprise by day, cooking the books for the dirty crusade by night. Your mother, the queen, has become almost ... pleasant. Your palm oil venture is so profitable, so legitimate, that she has begun to host the clean English traders in her own courtyard. You've become her show pony, the civilized son she trots out to prove she's a modern, respectable merchant. The irony is so thick, you feel like you're choking on it. The other business, it continues. The barracoons are still full, the canoes still launch. But you, the informant, have noticed a change. The dirty manifests you've been secretly auditing are ... thinner. The premium your mother commands has dropped. Your market analysis was right. The abolitionist print revolution, the boycotts, the rising insurance premiums. Your secret war is working. The inventory is becoming a high-risk asset. Then, one morning, the final data point arrives. It's not a merchant ship. It's not a leaky, familiar Guineaman that anchors offshore. This is a Shipoftheline. It's a Royal Navy frigate, the HMS Astrea, and it is a 32-gun fuck you to the entire port of Whydah. It doesn't wallow in the swells. It sits on them. Its gun ports a row of black, unblinking eyes. It's clean, it's painted, and it's bristling with uniformed Royal Marines. This is not a customer. This is a regulator. You're in your palm oil office when you hear the commotion. You run to the beach, and the entire city is there, silent, staring at this new, terrible grain-black python that has coiled itself around their harbor. And it doesn't send a canoe. It sends a longboat. A dozen men in crisp white uniforms and black shako hats pulling in perfect, terrifying unison. They don't land at the canoeman's beach. They land at the Yovogan's official dock. A British officer, a man with a gleaming sword and a face like a stone, steps out. He's not here to haggle. He's here to make an announcement. You watch from a distance as he's escorted to the Yovogan's compound. The city holds its breath. An hour later, the Yovogan emerges. His face is gray, and he begins to read the proclamation. This is the mainstream historical fact. The Slave Trade Act of 1807, it's real. It's not a bill anymore, it's law. As of March 25th, it is illegal for any British subject or British ship to trade in, purchase, sell, barter, or transfer any human being. A confused murmur goes through the crowd. The Queen, who has arrived with her full retinue, looks unbothered. She turns to her lieutenants. The British, she scoffs, are mad. They won't buy. Fine. We will sell to the Portuguese. We will sell to the Spanish. We will sell to the Americans. The Yovogan, who has heard all of it, continues to read. And this is the part you, the informant, were waiting for. This is the part your spreadsheet helped write. The act doesn't just apply to British ships. It gives the Royal Navy, as of this day, the legal authority to seize any ship of any nation found to be engaged in the trade, ... and to try the crew as pilots. The beach goes silent. This isn't a boycott. This is a blockade. The HMS Astrea isn't a customer. It's the new monopoly. It's the new Queen of Whydah, and it has bigger guns. The Queen's face. You've seen it angry, you've seen it disappointed, you've seen it bored. You have never seen this. It is the look of a mathematician who has just been told the concept of numbers has been abolished. She is not sad. She is not panicked. She is furious. She has been outmaneuvered, not by a rival Lopo, but by an idea. By a piece of paper from an island of pale, insane, sugar-hating zealots. This is the quirky and truly pathetic tidbit. You see one of her old rivals, a man she bankrupted in the palm oil trade, smile. He thinks this is her problem. He thinks this is a personal blow to her, not realizing that the ocean itself has just been closed for business. And you're standing by your leaky legitimate casks, the rancid smell of palm oil in your nose, and you feel a cold, hollow, and absolutely profound wave of victory. It's a sick, dark, and lonely feeling. You've done it. You, the failed investment, the ghost, the civilized son, have just crippled your mother's entire empire. You have, with your white man's math and your trader's heart, brought the single largest military on earth to your own doorstep. The Brooks diagram flashes in your mind. The inventory in her bar, RACOONS, ... is now just a prison. She has no buyers. Historians still argue whether the 1807 Act was truly a moral triumph, or if it was the single most brilliant and cynical act of geopolitical warfare in British history. Britain, having mastered the Industrial Revolution, no longer needed slave labor economies, but its rivals France, Spain, and the new United States did. Was this humanitarian act just a way for Britain to use its naval supremacy to kneecap its competitors' entire colonial economic model? You don't care. You don't care if it was morals or mutkacha. You just know that your mother, the Queen, is sitting on 800 units in her barracoon, and the customer just declared them worthless. The business model is not just crippled, it's over. The port of Whydah is paralyzed. The HMS Astrea is still out there, a gray shadow on the horizon, the perfect, silent symbol of a new and absolute power. It's a shark that has shut down the entire beach, and in the Queen's compound, the silence is a living, suffocating thing. The inventory in the barracoon's 800 men, women, and children is still there. They still have to be fed. They still have to be guarded. But now, they are not assets. They are overhead. They are, in the Queen's ledger, a catastrophic 800 persons loss. She doesn't rage. She doesn't weep. She simply sits in her courtyard in the deep shade of the mango tree for one full day. She is, you realize, calculating. She's running the numbers on a new, impossible reality. The King's cannons are useless. Her monopoly on the canoes is irrelevant. The ocean itself has been outlawed. On the second day, she summons you. You walk into the courtyard. The lieutenants are there, but they're not reporting. They're just standing, waiting, their faces a mask of confusion. The queen is on her carved stool. She looks. For the first time in your entire life, the unshakable calm is still there. But it's not the calm of power. It's the calm of ... finality. She doesn't look at you. She looks at her hands. "You knew," she says. It's not a question, it's an accusation. Her voice is a whisper, a dry rustle of leaves. I wrote to you, you say, your own voice sounding hollow. "I warned you of the market risk." "You did," she says. She finally lifts her eyes, and they are not cold, they are burning. They are two black coals of pure, condensed intellectual fury. "You warned me, you, my London man, my failed investment, you, the one who runs the clean books," she buzzes. "You didn't just warn me, did you? You are, in this moment, more terrified than you have ever been. More than when she disowned you. More than when you were sick on the ship to London. They are your people," she spits. "The word you're dripping with venom, the clean English. The ones who buy my legitimate oil, they did not do this from across the sea. They did not guess. Someone ... told them." She leans forward. Someone gave them the ledger. Someone told them how to aim the cannon. This is the mainstream historical fact of the moment. The Royal Navy, with its new West Africa squadron, was not just a moral force, it was an intelligence force. They needed informants. They needed to know which ships, which ports, which merchants. They needed ... data. And you are the data broker. You can't lie, not now, the game is over. "Yes," you say. Your voice is as quiet as hers, but it cuts through the humid air. "It was me. I gave them the data." The lieutenant's hands go to their machetes. This is it. This is treason. This is a death sentence. But the queen holds up one slow finger, and they freeze. She just stares at you. She's not seeing a traitor. She's not seeing a son. She's seeing the irony. She's seeing the algebra. "You," she whispers. "You ... stole from me. Yes, you say the ... quality control issues with the palm oil, the discounts, the inflated cask prices. Yes, that was ... you. Yes," she almost smiles. It is the most terrifying expression you have ever seen. It's the smile of a goddess who has just seen a rat chew through the foundations of her own temple. This is the quirky and truly pathetic tidbit. She's not furious about the morality. She's not even furious in this exact second about the treason. She is professionally insulted. You, her failed student, have been cooking her books, her ledgers, for years. You have beaten her at her own precise mathematical game. "Why?" she finally asks. A real question, and you tell her. You tell her about the Brooks diagram. You tell her about the speculum aurum on the lecture table. You tell her about the print revolution and the sugar boycotts. And then you deliver the final killing blow, the one that recasts her entire life's work. "It wasn't just my data, mother," you say. The word mother now, just a statement of fact. It was your money. The 10% I skimmed from your legitimate enterprise. The 15% I skimmed from your dirty one. I sent it all to them. It was your investment that paid for the pamphlets. It was your profits that hired the speakers. It was your premium brand money that funded the lobby that wrote the law. You have, in effect, just read her the final audited profit and loss statement of her entire life. Historians still argue whether the educated sons of these West African dynasties who worked against the trade were driven by pure, selfless abolitionist zeal, or if it was in fact the most complex and most historically significant act of patricidal, or in this case, matricidal rebellion, ever recorded. Was it morality, ... or was it a son finally finding a weapon big enough to defeat an all-powerful parent? The queen understands. She understands the equation. She, the Lopo, the queen of Whydah, the most ruthless and efficient commodity broker in West Africa, has just been informed that she personally funded her own hostile takeover. She, the master of the supply chain, just learned that her son was her supply chain's most devastating leak. She doesn't say a word. She just stands up, walks past you, and goes into her private rooms. And for the first time, she slams the door. The door is slammed. The silence that follows is absolute. The lieutenants, who are ready to cut you down for treason, just look at you. Their world has just been dissolved. Their queen has been defeated. Their enterprise is over. They don't look angry. They look unemployed. One by one, they just drift away. Back toward the nouseless barracoons, men without a purpose. You are left alone in the courtyard, the victor, and you have never felt more isolated. The fall of Whydah is not a single fiery event. It's not a cannonade, it's a pause. It's the sound of a massive, grinding engine that has suddenly and catastrophically run out of fuel. The HMS Astrea does not leave. It is, as you correctly guessed, the first ship of the new West Africa Squadron, and it is here to stay. The port is no longer a port. It is a problem to be managed. And the Queen? She is left with the immediate logistical nightmare of her 800 units. This is the brutal mainstream historical fact of the 1807 Act. It didn't free anyone, it just made them illegal to transport. The Queen is now in possession of 800 human beings, who are, to her, a catastrophic financial liability. They are 800 mouths to feed. They are 800 prisoners of war, many from the Oyo Empire, who cannot simply be released into the Dahomean interior without sparking a civil war. She can't sell them, she can't let them go, and, as you'd argued to her, she is a pragmatist. She is not a wasteful monster. She will not simply kill them, so she pivots. She does the only thing a true Lopo can do. She repurposes her assets. A few days later, you watch the scene that defines your hollow victory. The massive, reinforced gates of your mother's barracoons swing open. But the line of 800 people does not march toward the beach, toward the canoes, toward the Middle Passage. They are marched in coffles, inland. They are marched toward the new tracts of land your mother had the foresight to buy. They are marched to the palm oil plantations. You stopped the Brooks diagram. You didn't stop the shackles. This is the dark, quirky, and profoundly ironic tidbit. The infrastructure of the slave trade isn't torn down. It's rebranded. The high mud brick walls of the barracoons, no longer needed to hold inventory for the ships, are not demolished. They are, you learn with a fresh wave of nausea, repurposed. They become the new high-security warehouses for storing your legitimate palm oil casks. The exact same buildings that once held human beings now hold the moral commodity that has replaced them. The Queen, in her ultimate cynical masterstroke, is using the architecture of one empire to house the product of the next. Historians still argue with great, bitter intensity whether the 1807 Act and the pivot to legitimate commerce actually ended slavery in West Africa, or, if it simply transformed it, did it end the external transatlantic trade, only to entrench and expand a new system of internal plantation slavery. The demand for palm oil was as voracious as the demand for sugar had been, and who was going to climb the 50-foot thorn-covered trees to harvest the nuts? Who was going to press the tons of oil in the 100-degree heat? You, the civilized son. You, the abolitionist. You, the minister of not slaves. You have just liberated your mother's inventory from the horrors of the Middle Passage and turned them into a permanent, enslaved workforce for your own clean enterprise. You are no longer just her money launderer. You are now her plantation manager. Your victory is complete. You have destroyed your mother's primary business, and in doing so, you have handed her a monopoly on the next one, complete with a captive labor force. The global importance of Whydah, the slaving port, is dead. The Astrea has seen to that. The city is now quiet. The Chinamen are unemployed. The Yovojan has lost his tax base. You've broken your home. But the Queen's dynasty, it's just changed its letterhead. It's stronger than ever. And you are, finally and irrevocably, the true heir to her new, legitimate empire, built on the exact same principles as the old one. You are the plantation manager. You are the minister of not slaves, and your not slaves, the 800 former units from your mother's barracoon, are now the permanent captive workforce of her new empire. Your victory was a rebranding. Your moral crusade has been ... operation. And you, the land and educated civilized son, have proven to be the most efficient, most ruthless, and most profitable legitimate merchant in Whydah. You didn't just inherit her business, you've perfected it. You've streamlined the palm oil production. You've cut the cask leakage rate by another 5%. You are, in every single way, your mother's son. The Queen is old now. She doesn't leave the compound. She simply sits in the shade, a silent, withered, and terrifyingly content empress, while you, her viceroy, run the clean kingdom, and you have a son of your own. The Queen's grandson, and what do you do with him? You who were broken by your civilized education. You who were ripped apart by the Brooks diagram and the speculum aurum. You do the only thing you know. You do the only thing your mother's logic allows. You repeat the cycle. You send your son to London, but you don't send him to a cheap rental in Bloomsbury. You don't send him to a public lecture hall. You, now a man of extraordinary wealth, buy him a house in Kensington. You enroll him at Oxford. He's not there to be a spy or an informant. He's there to become a barrister. He's there to join the establishment. This is the mainstream historical fact of dynastic wealth. The first generation, your mother makes the dirty money. The second generation, you launders it. The third generation, your son inherits it. So clean, so respectable, so utterly disconnected from the inventory and the assortals that it's just ... capital, your son. The Queen's grandson is a proper English gentleman. He has a crisp accent. He discusses philosophy and political economy. And he is, of course, a passionate abolitionist. This is the exquisite, diamond-hard, quirky tidbit of your family's legacy. Your son, this polished, Oxford-acuted gentleman, becomes a patron of the Anti-Slavery Society. He sits on their board. He donates lavishly, in his own name. And where does this clean humanitarian money come from? It comes from the family trust, a perfectly respectable fund in a London bank. A fund that is refilled every 6 months by a wire transfer from the Whydah Agricultural Exports Corporation, the legitimate enterprise you built by turning 800 people into not slaves on a palm oil plantation. Your son, the grandson, is using the profits from your internal Dahomean slave labor system to fund the liberation of other slaves in places his family does not have business interests, like Brazil or the Ottoman Empire. His philanthropy is applauded in the London papers. He is a friend of humanity. He is the shining example of what a civilized African can become. And he has, you realize, no idea. You, in your rancid-smelling office in Whydah, are the firewall. You are the permanent, lonely, and damned man Timidal. You ensure that the profits from the plantation are seamlessly, quietly, and legitimately transformed into the capital that funds the gentleman. You have, in effect, become the Brooks diagramma dark unseeable, human pressing machine that transforms one thing human misery into another capital. Historians still argue with a fury about this very legacy. This is the real afterlife of the money. Can dirty money ever become clean? Is wealth built on atrocity laundered simply by passing it to a third generation that finds the atrocity distasteful? Your grandson uses his clean money to build a hospital wing. He uses it to fund a new library at Oxford. He uses it to endow a school for girls in Sierra Leone. These are all indisputably good things, but they are all paid for by the speculum. They are all paid for by your mother, the Queen, the woman who looked at a war and saw inventory. You die in Whydah. You die a respected merchant, a pioneer of legitimate trade. Your mother, the Queen, outlives you by 6 months. She dies the richest woman on the coast, and your son, the Oxford-acuted barrister, never returns. He sells the Whydah Agricultural Exports Corporation to a faceless British conglomerate who, you can be sure, will be even more efficient in their management of the not slaves. The money is now just ... money. It's a number in a London bank. It funds political careers, it builds railroads, it sponsors social movements that praise the ideals of the Enlightenment. The Queen's profits, born from the most profound human cynicism, have, after 2 generations, become civilization. Her victory isn't just complete, it's structural. So, you die in Whydah. You die in your rancid-smelling palm oil office, a pioneer of legitimate trade, a respected, wealthy, and hollowed-out man. Your mother outlives you. Your son in London thrives. You're not slaves on the plantation. Well, the British conglomerate that buys the corporation is, as predicted, far more efficient and far less conflicted than you ever were. Let's leave that office. The smell of the rancid palm oil, it's finally fading. The 19th century heat, the shouting, the ledgers, just let it all dissolve. You can open your eyes. You're still here in the same spot, but it's not Whydah. It's Whydah in the 21st century. The city is still here, but the engine is quiet. The forts are still standing, not as warehouses, but as museums. The Portuguese fort of São João Baptista de Ajuda, in a truly bizarre, quirky tidbit, was actually held by Portugal as a tiny, formal piece of national territory until 1961, a stubborn, forgotten colony of a few square yards. The air is still hot. It's still humid. But the sound you hear is not the sound of machetes in a palm grove or the chanting of canoe. It's the sound of motorbikes and a distant radio. You're on a path. It's a 2.5 mile long path, a dusty red earth road lined with palm trees. This is the slave route, a UNESCO-recognized historical trail. This is the exact path, the last 2.5 miles of African soil, that the inventory the units from the Queen's Barracoons walked to get to the beach. You're walking it now. You're walking past the Python Temple, which is still here, still active, the pythons still sunning themselves, protected and revered. You're walking past memorials and statues that mark the stations of that last, terrible walk. Here is where they were fed their last meal. Here is the tree of forgetfulness that men were forced to circle, a votive ritual meant to cleanse them of their memories of home. It's all here. It's history, not as a ledger, but as a journey. And then you get to the end. The path opens up, and you're on the beach. The sand is white. The surf is just as violent and terrifying as it was 200 years ago, a churning, thundering wall of white water. And standing on the sand, facing the Atlantic, is a massive Concreton Brent's archway. This is the mainstream historical fact of Whydah, the door of no return, La Porte du non-retour. It was built in 1995. It's a memorial, a gateway. On one side, a line of chained figures walks toward the ocean. On the other, they walk away into the water. It is the architectural tombstone for the 1.2 million souls who were loaded onto ships from this very beach. You stand there, the wind is hot, and you think about the Queen, you think about her clean money building hospitals in London, and you think about this ... clean memorial. Historians still argue with great passion whether these modern memorials are a true, necessary, and painful atonement, or if they are, in their own way, a new kind of processing. By turning this unimaginable logistical horror into a tourist site, into a stop on a historical trail, does it make it safe? Does it help us heal, or does it just help us ... manage the memory? You look at that arch. The Queen's grandson, the Oxford-educated barrister, probably donated to the fund that built this, never once realizing he was memorializing the very act that paid for his education. This, you realize, is the final, perfect irony. The Queen's two legacies are here, staring at each other. Her dirty legacy is memorialized in this concrete arch. Her clean legacy, her money, is still out there, across the water, funding the civilization that now comes back here, on airplanes, to take pictures of the atrocity that made it all possible. You, the son, the minister of not slaves, you were the bridge. You were the one who stood in the middle, smelling the rancid oil, laundering the blood into capital. You were the real and only door of no return. And so, you can let that final, terrible thought just ... dissolve. The heat on the beach is ... gentle. The wind is just a breeze. And the sound of that surf, that constant roaring 18th century surf, it's beginning to soften, isn't it? It's not a sound of violence, it's just a rhythm. A deep, endless washing sound, like a fan on a low setting. You can let the image of the concrete arch and the red earth road and the rancid-smelling warehouse just ... fade. They're not your problem to solve, not tonight. They're just parts of a story that is, for now, over. You're not in Whydah, you're not in London, you're just ... here, listening, safe, and the only thing you need to process right now is your own gentle breathing. The only ledger you need to worry about is the slow, steady in and out of your own body, which is yours and yours alone. Just listen to the sound of the ocean, or the fan, or the quiet in your room, and let the story go.